Today we're out here in Southern California with the all-new 2019 Toyota Avalon Hybrid. The Avalon is Toyota's largest sedan in America, so you can think of this sort of as the bigger, more comfortable, and more expensive Camry, or perhaps as the less expensive alternative to a Lexus ES. This is also a very direct competitor to things like the Kia Cadenza or the Buick LaCrosse. For 2019, Toyota gives us more of everything, even in the Avalon Hybrid. So we have more room on the inside, definitely more cargo room in the trunk because the battery is now located under the rear seats. We get more power under the hood, and we get better fuel economy. The front-end design of the new Avalon is definitely different than the previous generation and fairly polarizing. So be sure and let me know what you think about this look down there in the comment section below. There are two different front-end looks depending on whether you're looking at the XLE version or the limited version of the Avalon, or the XSE and the touring version of the Avalon. That's because the Avalon is sort of split into two different missions. We have the comfier side, which is the model we're looking at here, with these horizontal stripes on the grille, and the sportier side, which you can find in the XSE and the touring. All models have full LED headlamps, although the headlamps do change depending on the trim that you get. Since we're in the top-end trim, we have this very distinctive design with these sort of splits on each side. This design is a little bit more apparent at night, of course, with the LED accent strips, but you can see that we have a very interesting turn signal effect going on this side of the Avalon. In order to comply with North American turn signal regulations, this intersection just blinks on and off, and then we get a progressive section on the outboard side. Toyota has been very aggressive at making their active safety systems standard in all the new models in their lineup. Although for 2019, the Avalon does not get the TSS 2.0 system that we do find in the Corolla hatchback or the Toyota RAV4. Toyota tells us that the development cycle of the Avalon was just a little bit too ahead, so this still uses the previous generation Toyota Safety Sense system. This version of Toyota Safety Sense still offers radar adaptive cruise control, autonomous braking with collision warning, pedestrian detection, but not cyclist detection or nighttime pedestrian detection, which we do find in their latest software package. The Avalon is the longest sedan in the Toyota lineup in America at 195.9 inches long. This is, of course, still notably shorter than some of the competition, but it is about 3 to 4 inches longer than the average mid-size sedan in America. If you're shopping for a mid-size sedan in America and you're thinking you wish you had a little bit more trunk room or a little bit more rear passenger room, then the Avalon is the exact vehicle for you. Although it is worth noting that in general terms, the headroom up front and in the back are actually quite similar to the current generation Toyota Camry. And that's logical, of course, because the Avalon and the Camry are sort of cousins. The rear of the Avalon borrows a little bit of styling from the rest of the Toyota lineup, including, I think, the Toyota Mirai with these tail lamps right here. Very similar to what was going on up front, this section, instead of the inboard section, actually blinks on and off with the turn signals, and then we get the progressive action right here on the trunk lid. Since this is the hybrid model, we don't get visible exhaust tips down at the bottom. Instead, they're tucked back there under the bumper, but the overall look is very similar to the non-hybrid Avalon. Under the hood, we find basically the same 2.5-liter hybrid system that we find in the hybrid Camry. This produces 215 horsepower total, 176 horsepower engine, plus the electric motors in the planetary hybrid system. Although Toyota calls this an eCVT, this is not a CVT in the way that you normally think about continuously variable transmissions. This does not use a belt and pulley arrangement like we do find in some hybrids out there. Instead, this uses a planetary gear set and 2 electric motors to sort of imitate a transmission. In my opinion, this actually doesn't have a transmission in the way that we normally think about them. Instead, this uses those 2 motors to act as one. Because of the design differences in the rest of the vehicle, this gets lower fuel economy than we find in the Camry Hybrid. This runs between 43 combined and 44 combined, depending on the version that you get. Although that's obviously lower than a Camry Hybrid, this is considerably better than any of the other entries in this particular segment. The 2018 Kia Cadenza, for instance, gets 23 miles per gallon. So this is about 20 miles per gallon better. Now, if you want more power and you're willing to give up a little bit of fuel economy, there is still a 3.5-liter V6 available that produces 301 horsepower, and it sends power to the front wheels via an 8-speed automatic transmission. But you're going to get about 25 to 26 miles per gallon in that model. I'm going to give front seat comfort 9 out of 10 points. These seats don't have an extending thigh cushion like we do see in some of the competition, although we do have a memory-linked powered tilt telescopic steering column and a 4-way adjustable lumbar support. And in a nice move, the passenger seat in this model has exactly the same range of motion as the driver's seat. Headroom in the rear is relatively generous for a modern mid-size sedan. However, if I sit upright in this hybrid, my head still barely touches the ceiling. That's because the battery pack has been relocated from the trunk to right here under the rear seats, and that does mean that we lose about ½ inch of headroom. So if you get the non-hybrid model, you actually get a little bit more room in the back. However, this is still more generous in the back than many mid-size sedans in America, especially something like a Honda Accord. A lot of sedan shoppers have moved to crossovers, and that has allowed sedan designers to make their vehicles a little bit sexier in terms of the overall side profile, and that does have an impact on the rear seat headroom. If I move to the middle seat, we get a little bit less headroom than the outboard sitting position, but my head is still, again, just touching the ceiling. I don't have to crane my head to one side like you do find in smaller mid-size sedans. Scooting all the way over to the right side of the vehicle, I had a 6'5" person up front, the seat's all the way back in its tracks. You can see that I have a very generous amount of legroom left. Rear seat passengers get a softly padded armrest with 2 cup holders, and because of the location of the battery pack, Toyota is still able to give us a 60/40 folding rear seat. Thanks to the new location of the hybrid battery pack, cargo area is exactly the same as it is in the non-hybrid at 16 cubic feet. This is actually quite a large trunk, and it is very, very flat. This is about 1 to 2 cubic feet more than the Toyota Camry, depending on which Camry you get. Under the cargo load floor, we find a toolkit, some additional storage space, it's quite small, and then a donut spare tire under that. All Avalon models, including the hybrid, get height adjustable seatbelts for the driver and the front passenger. The model that we're driving right here has the combination Softex and suede insert interior. Softex is not real leather, it is an imitation leather product. One of the changes for the 2019 model year is that leather is no longer standard. Instead, we get this combination leather and Softex seat, but leather is still available in certain trims. It's actually a little bit easier on camera to see the different materials going on the seat, because in person they're much closer to the same color. So we get the soft touch section on the outside that is not perforated, this soft touch inner section, and then right here on the bolsters on the seat bottom and back cushion, we get that suede material. That same theme continues over to the doors, where we get the suede material perforated right here in the center section of the door, more of that Softex trim below. And then we get soft touch plastics for most of the door, except for the bottom part. Of course, as you'd expect from a vehicle in this category, the dashboard is made from mostly soft touch plastics. We have a soft touch upper section right here. We have more of that stitched Softex material down lower. And then we have a moderately sized slot style glove compartment. You can see where the instruction manual is right there. I'm not sure this would be able to accommodate a larger tablet computer, but smaller ones will likely fit. The new Avalon features one of the biggest design trends in the industry, which is putting the infotainment system higher on the dashboard and mounted sort of like a tablet computer grafted onto the dash. Some people like this, some people dislike it, but the reason that manufacturers are doing this is because it gets the screen a little bit higher off the ground, a little bit closer to your eye line as you're driving, and it also allows them to debulk the dashboard. So notice, if this screen was to be integrated into the dashboard, but in this same location, the dashboard would have to be a lot bulkier, a little bit taller, etc., and it wouldn't make the car feel quite as open. This screen is integrated into the entire center console. It actually kind of curves around like you see right here, and then continues horizontally down there by the shifter and the cup holders. Of course, the biggest change for 2019 is that we now get Apple CarPlay in this infotainment system. It's worth noting that Android Auto, however, is not available at this time. This same basic software package will also be used in the 2019 RAV4 as well as the 2019 Corolla hatchback. This integration of Apple CarPlay works a little bit differently than some of the competitions. If we have factory navigation and we press the map button, then it goes to the factory nav system, not Apple CarPlay. But because this model does not have factory navigation, if we press the map button, we do get Apple CarPlay. The same thing goes for the phone button. If we press that button, it takes us over to the CarPlay interface. If we hit the home button again, you'll notice that we have the infotainment over here on the left and a selectable feature over there on the right. But if we select this right here, it does not take us to CarPlay. It actually takes us to the car's interface for the media source. Below the infotainment system, we have 2 large air vents, the dual-zone automatic climate control in the Avalon. This model just has heated seats, but certain models do have ventilated seats. You'd see another button right there. Below the climate controls, we find a storage cubby where you could keep your smartphone or other small items, and you can actually slide this back like that, and then under there we find a fairly large storage compartment with a wireless charging mat, so you can charge compatible wireless phones. Continuing back from there, we find a console shifter. It's basically the same one that we find in the non-hybrid model. We move over to the left for the sport mode, and then you can effect gear changes by pressing away from the driver for gear up and pulling towards the driver for gear down. Behind the shifter, we have our drive mode buttons. We have Eco, Normal, and Sport. There's a brake hold button, an EV mode button, and then an electric parking brake. To the right of that, we have two large cup holders. They have kind of different shapes going on here, so this one is a little bit better at holding juice boxes or things like coconut water that come in square containers, and this one looks like it will easily accommodate large takeout drinks. Between the front seats, we find a padded center armrest. This opens to reveal a two-tiered storage compartment. This is what the key looks like. It's very similar to what we find on the 2018 Camry. There is a removable storage tier right here where you can keep your smartphone or other goodies like that. This is where we find 3 USB ports. These two are charge only. This one interfaces with the Entune 3 audio system. The steering wheel design is quite similar to what we see in the Camry. It's a 3-spoke steering wheel with sport grips on top, perforated sections on either side. Toyota splits the infotainment controls on the left and the right of the steering wheel. So on the left side we have volume up, down, voice command button, and then on the right we have mode and track forward, backward. Instead of putting the cruise control controls on a stalk, they actually put them right here on the face of the steering wheel in this new wheel design. So we have our lane keeping assistance button right here, distance between us and the car in front of us, speed up, down, etc. Back on the left side of the wheel, we have the buttons that control that multifunction display, and then a dedicated phone button. On the back of the steering wheel, we have paddle shifters, so down on the left and then up on the right. Since this is a planetary hybrid system, these are imitation shifts because there are no actual dedicated ratios in this drivetrain. The 2019 Avalon uses basically the same engine and transmissions that we find under the hood of the 2018 Toyota Camry. So logically, acceleration should be nearly identical. Now, we've been down here in Southern California, so we haven't had the opportunity to test this on our own home test track, so we're just going to go with estimates here. I estimate that 0 to 60 should happen right around 7 seconds. The Camry Hybrid for 2018 did it in 6.9, but this is just a hair heavier than that Camry Hybrid. Because of that added curb weight, my estimate for the 60 to 0 braking time is going to be right around 121 feet. Of course, we hope to get our hands on this at home very soon so we can do our usual battery of tests, and then we'll have more firm numbers, so be sure and stay tuned for that. The big difference between the Camry Hybrid and the Avalon Hybrid is that the Avalon feels a little bit more grown up, a little bit larger, but it doesn't necessarily feel less sporty. Because in this generation of the Avalon, Toyota did something surprising, and they have made basically every version of their large sedan firmer in terms of overall suspension tuning. Now, of course, you can get the touring model with the adaptive suspension system that seems to soften things up on the bottom end and firm things up on the upper end, but overall this is still going to be firmer than the Avalon that you might be used to. So if you're looking for a Buick-style ride, you may want to stick with a Buick because the Avalon has gone just a little bit sporty. As I said earlier, that's because of the changing demographics for the sedan shopper in America. A lot of family shoppers or people looking for softer rides have been moving to crossovers like Toyota's own Highlander. That leaves the Camry and to some extent the Avalon there for people that are looking for something that's a bit more engaging to drive out on the road than the average crossover. In terms of overall genetics, the Avalon is logically very closely related to the Camry, and it benefits from all the handling improvements that have happened in that new 2018 Camry. As I said in that review, the Camry shockingly went from very class average to actually class leading in terms of handling, and it really does handle extremely well, and all that's translated into the larger Avalon. Now, this definitely feels a little bit bigger out on the road, but it is surprisingly engaging to drive, especially for a hybrid. Handling in the Avalon improves, but they have sacrificed some of the ride quality that we've associated with the Avalon for so long in the process. So in terms of overall handling, I'm going to give this an A because I think this really does have what it takes to compete with the larger American sedans like the Buick LaCrosse or the Chevy Impala. But in terms of overall ride, this definitely falls behind the latest generation LaCrosse. That's not necessarily a bad thing because this is still very comfortable for a long highway trip, but you can feel those smaller road imperfections making their way into the cabin, again, even in this hybrid version. On the flip side, of course, when the road starts to bend like it is here, it's going to be an awful lot more fun than the previous generations of the Avalon. In terms of overall cabin noise, we don't have an official score, obviously, but I expect this model to come in right around 69 or 70 decibels. This cabin is notably quieter than the Camry. They've done more work deadening the sound coming from the engine and of course from the tires and wind noise. It's really obvious when you're driving out on a less than perfect road surface. Fuel economy has been pretty good during our day of mixed driving down here in Southern California. We've averaged 41.6 miles per gallon, which is pretty close to what the EPA says we should get. Toyota's hybrid systems have generally been very close to EPA ratings for most folks in mixed driving. Like many of Toyota's other hybrid systems, the main benefit to this system will be found in city driving, low-speed driving, stop-and-go driving, that sort of thing. If you're out on the open highway, this is going to be fairly similar to other vehicles with small four-cylinder engines, although according to the EPA, this still should be a little bit better. If you're cross-shopping this to something like a Kia Cadenza, this is going to be notably more efficient. And interestingly enough, even though the Cadenza recently got a new 8-speed automatic transmission, it wasn't actually that much faster than this 215 horsepower hybrid system. Now, the Cadenza seems to be a little bit more focused on comfort than this generation of the Avalon. It's trying to cross the bridge between the Avalon and something like the Lexus ES. But when it comes to fuel economy, there's absolutely no contest. This will beat that Cadenza by about 20 miles per gallon. That fuel economy delta doesn't just apply to the Cadenza either. This will get at least 20 miles per gallon better than something like a Chrysler 300 V6 or the Chevy Impala or even the Buick LaCrosse. Of course, if you want more fun out on the road, you can give up the fuel economy and get the 300 horsepower V6 under this hood with Toyota's latest 8-speed automatic transmission. For 2019, Toyota has adjusted the Hybrid Premium, and it's now smaller than it's ever been before. So the hybrid model will only cost you $1,000 more than the non-hybrid. That means that the average owner of the Avalon will actually save money in terms of operational costs over the lifetime of the vehicle. The base hybrid model will start at $36,500, and we get quite a bit more standard equipment for 2019 than we found last year. Of course, one of the big things, as I said before, that we don't see in the Avalon is their latest TSS 2.0 safety system. We won't find that until a little bit later, Toyota tells us. That pricing structure makes the Avalon about $3,000 more expensive than a Kia Cadenza base. However, we get more standard equipment in the Avalon than we find in the Cadenza and considerably better fuel economy. Although some manufacturers have been fiddling with start-stop systems or mild hybrid systems, this is the only full hybrid in this segment. So if you really are looking for 40+ miles per gallon, this really is going to be your only option. You will, of course, have to wait until we can get our hands on one for a complete week for our usual battery of comparisons and official test results. But it's pretty safe to say that if you're looking for a larger and more comfortable alternative to the average mid-size sedan in America, definitely give the Avalon Hybrid a look. Because of the small hybrid premium that you have to pay for the Avalon Hybrid, this will actually save the average driver in America money in the long run. Thanks for checking out this video. Be sure and hit that subscribe button down there at the bottom of your screen. And of course, let me know what you think about the look of the 2019 Avalon, especially this very polarizing grille right up front. You can also head over to facebook.com/AlexNautos and see what we're driving this week. I'll see you later.